Welcome back to another episode of the Athlete Podcast. We have a very special guest in Fabricio Ite. So, Fabricio, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the podcast, and it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I'm really flattered that you asked me to come on. So thank you.
So, Fabricio, give us a little bit of a background about yourself and specifically your work with Rob Whittaker, former UFC champion, and also some of your previous experience in the MMA field and the grappling field.
I always worked. So by trade, I'm a teacher. That's my the main thing that I always did. I worked at TAFE for about 15 years. I'm still actually working at TAFE now. I'm doing some work with them. Um, just not in sport and fitness anymore, but I was a sport and fitness teacher for 15 years. But mainly what I did there was put educational programs together. And TAFE by and large is about identifying skill gaps in learning in a client, in a student, and being able to bridge those gaps in the educational experience. And so I've always worked in sport as well. So I was always a wrestling coach for a long time, probably since about 2003. 2004, I started coaching little kids in wrestling and then coached some really good athletes that went on into Commonwealth Games, a whole bunch of other stuff. So I was heavily involved with wrestling with the national team for years and years. And in and around that, I started working with Rob, but primarily it was more around setting up the training program, setting up a high performance team, setting up understanding the skill gaps that Rob would have had, and then after identifying them, putting in place the processes with which to close those gaps. So that's kind of what I've always done, like as a professional. That's what I've always done and still doing. And I've worked with other athletes and that as well. Rob being probably the most notable one, but I've had students in classes and in other programs that have gone on to play Australia and whatnot. But I've never worked with anyone as closely as a few guys from the wrestling team, but none of them as high profile.
So when you're working, with a guy like Rob and setting up that high performance team, because that's crucial these days in MMA, especially when you reach that level at the UFC. What do you exactly look at? Do you see, finding those gaps? Do you have to know him first, or you can just, within a few sessions you can see his gaps, or how do you build that team?
It depends because, like, you have to have that rapport with that particular person, and the person has to have buy-in. So you're not going to be able to just do it. At least I can't just do it with anyone because not everyone's going to have that those. The thing is, some people might not have that particular thing or whatever Rob may or may not have had as their skill gap. Some people will know exactly, like, let's say, for example, someone like yourself, maybe your skill gaps, if you wanted to fight, are not necessarily in the realms of, maybe, I don't even know, but not necessarily in the realms of high performance and sports. Like, that's not necessarily what you need. You probably need the fighting part, you know what I mean? Whereas Rob had the fighting part. It was just about getting the right people around him at the right time. And then he has to be smart enough to be able to identify that. And he was. And he is. So it was like a kind of perfect storm because sometimes, like, I can look at someone and be like, I know clearly what that person would need. And they might have good coaches, but the coaches aren't doing what I'm good at. You get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or what you're good at, I might not be doing. You know what I mean? But it's also a perfect storm in that he lived near me too. You know what I mean? And so I had the opportunity to be able to we spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours together. But there was a stage where we were literally living, a couple of stages where we were living literally minutes apart. So I could spend a lot of time with him. And I didn't have kids at the time too. And he was just having a young family and whatnot. So, things change. And so there's a whole bunch of that stuff. I don't think you can force those things necessarily. And you have to have an athlete that not only is smart enough to identify it and be able to do it, but that has the ability to do it as well. Because you can't spend the amount of time, effort, money, everything, and the guy is not going to be a champion. And that's out nowadays. Like, oh no, how can you say that? And it's like, dude, if I trial for Sydney Swans, and I'm not good enough, they're gonna fucking cut me. Like, it's how can you even like you know what I mean? Like, people have read
Yeah.
too many self-help books. You know what I mean? Which I'm not against, but you got to understand that some people are not that level. You can't spend that much time on every single person, and there's only going to be a handful of your Romero's, Robert Whitakers, Israel Adesanya's, like there's Chris Weidman's, Luke Rockhold's. There's a handful of those, and to be honest with you, middleweight at the moment is like that you have like generational fighters, like one in a generation fighter, and you've got them all in there at the same time. But granted, some of them at the back end of their career, but still, you got guys that you wouldn't have seen. You know, you would have seen one Anderson for years, but now you've got a whole bunch in there. You know, so that's another thing. Like, there's not a lot of those people either. So you've got to be able to identify who you're going to spend your time with. You can't just like try and do that with 20 people because you're not as well not knowing what Rob and I did. You know what I mean? Like the amount of time we spent together and all of that. Like it's just not going to happen. You're just not going to be able to. So and yeah, that's it. Sorry, I kind of went on a tangent. Sorry.
No, that was good. No, it was so basically in a nutshell, you just need to be honest. Like you just need to think, does he have the ability to compete, or not just with Rob, anyone? Do they have the ability, yes or no?
Out like just as years progressed and just doing different work, people are caught up with either pretending to be authentic or being nice instead of being authentic, and they don't want to, you know what I mean? That they're not actually being authentic over nice. You know, they're not being what's real. This is what's real. This is what, you know, like no, you're not going to make it. You know what I mean? Or you are going to make it, but you need to do these things. Like, and it's rare. Like not many people are going to do that. Not many people are going to be honest with themselves. You know, not many people are going to hold a mirror up to themselves and go, yeah, this is what needs to be done, and this is what I need to do. You know what I mean? And a lot of the coaches, because MMA, tennis, MMA, a few of these sports, are they have a phenomenon in them in that the athlete could be 20 years old, but he holds all the money, and so he's the one, or she is the one that can hire or fire a coach, and sometimes that's good because you know we being in a bad environment with bad coaches is not good. But sometimes you have, and like this in no way, like with Rob and I, we never had problems financially. We're not on bad terms. You know what I mean? Like, so in no shape, way, or form is this a fucking thing. Like, my experience with Rob and everything like that was great. We've had disagreements. We spend up to, honestly, probably 10 hours a day together sometimes in the car driving around Sydney. So did we always, you know, like have a great time? Nah, sometimes we have disagreements. Sometimes we get home at the end of the day and you're like, done, you know, but overall, like it was a great experience, you know, don't get me wrong. So I only said that just because I don't want people to read into shit. I'm not even talking, because I'm not talking about it, but I'm watching young guys, sometimes the girls that are fighting in MMA or in tennis or whatever, and they're only 20, 21 years old, but they can chop and change their coaches. You know what I mean? So you're not, how can you be getting a proper development without you do high performance? You need to spend time, you need to have a few years with an athlete before that can start to kick over. And so if you've got a young person that can make those decisions, I see that is a big thing in those sports where an athlete is like, it's not going to work. And then the coaches, a lot of the times, are scared to lose their jobs. And so then that makes them not be authentic, and then the athlete's not getting the best that they deserve. Maybe they don't deserve it if they can't be honest about it. You know what I mean? So I see that as a big issue when I see fight, like in fight sports, which is where I've had the most experience. Because like I said, like an athlete can just, he's 20 years old, doesn't know anything, and he can chop and change, or she can chop and change, and it's not good. Sorry, I'll say one other thing. It's like, you know, when people go, wouldn't you like to go back to school and tell all those teachers that said that you were a loser or that you're a dickhead, and now show them where you're at now, and really rub it in their face. And I think, like, man, do you think there's not a possibility that you were a dickhead when you were 17? Because I know I was. You know what I mean? Like, if I went back to school and I was like, you said I was a dickhead at school, but I fucking was. I was a 17-year-old kid. You know what I mean? Like that. Not like I wasn't a horrible kid, but not all my decisions were fantastic. So, like, imagine being given money and right of way when you're 21 years old. Like, don't really, you don't really know anything. And then if you've got coaches that are scared to tell you something because they're going to lose their job, because they're now at the whim of, King Tut, who's, 20 years old and has got a little bit of money, then what are you going to get long term? I don't think you're going to be able to develop the athlete. I'm not even a sports scientist. That's not my background. My background is not in sports science, but it is in education and it is in sport. And I'll hire a sports scientist or a high performance coach or something like that. Well, I do a lot of the high performance stuff, but I'll hire a sports scientist.
You got to have the ability. You got to have that rapport, and then the sports science, the strength and conditioning, the coaches. That's just that's what's going to separate you from the rest of the field. But you got to get that. You got to get the base right. What's the base? Being able to fight or being able to be. Can you play your sport? Even like you said, any individual sport, tennis.
100%.
Any sport, full stop, not just individual. You got to be able to play your sport. But I think where coaches lack, they get caught up between telling the athlete what they want to know compared to what they need to know. And I reckon the best coaches is, they're direct, they're honest, but they say things, in a way that individualizes to that player or that athlete. Because, you say one thing to one athlete, like you said, if they've got all the power, they've got all the money, where they're going to tell you to go. But if you say, hey, I've seen a few holes, do you mind me telling you what they are? And I think the way you say it as well is really important, because, you say one thing, to one athlete, they're going to respond completely differently to the other athlete.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes you just have to understand, like, how can I say to you? It's like, sometimes it's just not going to work. It's just, you just got to, or it could have worked. It worked for a while. You know what I mean? And then you've got to go and do different things. Like we were saying off air before, it's like you might have had a really, 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 really good experience with a really good teacher in year 11. You're 25 now. You're not going to go back to year 11. It's like the teacher's teaching year 11 people, and they got to do what they're good at. And you now have to move on, and do your own thing and find your own path. And it was good while it lasted. It was good for that time, and that's something as well people need to understand. Like, sometimes people try and hold on to that, to a situation that's not going to work, or an athlete is trying to make a team that he's not going to make, or she's not going to make. She's not going to make that team. You're not that good. Sorry, you know what I mean? And it becomes, the coach didn't like me, and that's why I never played, and blah, 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 this and that. I think, like, dude, you could have benched Maradona. You know what I mean? At some point, he was going to get a fucking run. And it's like undeniable talent. You know what I mean? Yes, there are coaches that have ruined athletes, 100%. And there are bad coaches out there, 1 billion%. But it's like, if everyone starts being honest and being authentic with stuff, like, like, you kind of know, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of know if this is someone that you can spend that time with and put that effort in.
Yeah, there really is nothing better than seeing those really good relationships, especially like in team sports, because there's more than one individual responsible. Like, I'm not too sure if you're a soccer fan, but watching teams like Barcelona play, they don't even have to communicate. They already know where everyone is. There's obviously a high level of group cohesion. Same thing in the AFL with Richmond. Obviously, 2 premierships in the last 3 years. It's almost like it's one club. It's not like there's the players and there's the coaches and there's the other staff and it's one club, and that can be almost more hard than to develop that group cohesion and chemistry than actually developing the skill, because you're obviously not going to get along with everyone. You're not going to, that's a given. If you want to be honest, like you're saying, you're not going to get. But how are you actually going to get the job done you know, and work and just figuring out a way that you can work with these people. You know, it's that can be a real challenge to, you know, especially in team environments and individual environments.
It's extremely difficult, man. But it's and a lot of the times it's not given the respect that it deserves because people will just hire based on skills or whatever, you know. But like I said, like it's a given that if I'm hiring a doctor, if I'm looking for a doctor, it's a given that the guy's going to have a medical degree. You know what I mean? It's a given. That's not like you can't rock up to. I can't rock up to an interview for that's looking for a doctor. I haven't got a medical degree. You know what I mean? And then we can start to go, whose medical degree is better? Okay, cool. There's these 8 guys left, you know, but then I'm going to hire out of that. It just doesn't matter anymore. Like, and the reality is when you are Richmond or Barcelona, you know, the skill level of the people that are going to be applying for those jobs, or that you're going to be headhunting. You know what I mean? It's not going to be a guy that, you know, has almost finished his Cert 3 at TAFE. Like, you know what I mean? It's going to be, you know what I mean? He's not going to apply to be the head therapist or something at Barcelona, which is not even a sporting team, it's a brand. You know what I mean? That person's not going to go, hey, man, listen, I've got 3 units left in my Cert 3 and, you know, I failed anatomy and physiology, but I'm getting a redo. That's not going to be the guy. You're going to have the top of the top of the top. So you're going to pick someone that's going to be able to be cohesive in that unit. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Like to train, for example, with Rob, you know, in the gym, what kind of guys that were looking after him? Were they, you know, just a bachelor degree guys, or were they guys, you know, you talk about, you know, they're going to know their stuff, but were they, you know, really, really, really high level guys, or were they just, you know, they know their stuff, but their ability to build their rapport with Rob was good, or like?
No, with Rob, because we picked the people, like everyone was good. We had doctors that we could just call, like I just call them, like proper doctors like that work with big football teams. We had university lecturers, like heaps of. We had a big network of people. You know what I mean? But you've got to also know how to use the network of people, and when to use them, and also have someone there that's going to say, hey, we have to get rid of this guy. This guy's not. He doesn't want to tell you something different. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say about Rob. You know, I don't want to talk about Rob necessarily because, you know, people can watch this and then go, "Is he talking about me?" No, I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking in general. You know what I mean? But you can apply it to Rob or Barcelona.
Yeah, spot on.
Rob's people in general that we had and probably have still, they're all high level. There's no people that are a joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had a couple guys from America on the previous episodes of the podcast, and some work with like 4 NCAA Division I wrestling teams, and I had another guy, Riley Ross. He's worked with the likes of TJ Dillashaw, Michael Bisping, Jake Ellenberger, Aaron Pico's another one. You know, real high level wrestlers, and he was saying like, you know, they are most of them are genetic freaks. Like he can get, you know, the squad of in rugby, not rugby, American football, which is the NFL, but in college, you can literally, you know, there's a squad maybe of 40 or 50. You can literally guarantee 3 or 4. You can bring them, and they can be naturally good wrestlers.
100%.
But what he was saying was, and this really got me going. Although they're good genetics, like they're training, you know, 20 hours a week. 20 hours a week, and you're not going to, you know, especially with the university system in Australia, no one, you know, some people, you know, depending what level and what their goals are, but they can't even train, you know, an hour and a half twice a week, you know, like let alone, you know, 20 hours a week.
I'll tell you something we had for Rob as well. We have and people ask me like for spreadsheets and that and everything, they don't get it all, like intellectual property. It's not fully complex, but I'm not going to give them to you. You know what I mean? Like if you and I want to have a coffee and sit down, I think you get it straight away. It's not a big thing. But the major thing is this is what I found. right? Every single session for the last 6, 7 years, every single week, we record it. We record the load, the duration, and the fatigue, all of that stuff.
Yep.
And also record how the person feels at the peak. It's not hard, man. It's not very, like I said, I'm not a sports scientist. But when you have that kind of data over 7 or 8 years, you start to be able to understand what the athlete's doing. And here's the real fucking simple thing that I say to people. If you want to achieve the results you achieved 4 or 5 years ago, then go back and look at those journals. What were you doing during that time? And what are you doing now? Compare those journals. I would almost tell you that you're not doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Are you eating the same? Are you training the same? Are you blah, 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 blah? That's just like something that, like a non-sports scientist, I'm telling you, like just as someone that's seen that. But the thing is, man, a lot of people have all this amazing technology to do this, to do that, to track this. But unless you're actually using whatever data you're collecting, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? So with Rob, I have all these sessions, like the load, the intensity, the duration, all of that. You know what I mean? So you're able to track that, and you're able to track however many hours a week he's doing and whatnot. If you're not doing that, dude, you're not coaching. If you're not breaking down video of performances, wins and or losses, you're not coaching, man. You know what I mean? Like you're helping out. You know what I mean? And that's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. But you're not part of a high performance. You're not. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing.
Yeah, you
and
need
that I think.
Sorry, go on. What was that?
No, that's what I mean. Like with genetics, it's like, look, a Ferrari out of the factory is always going to beat a Holden Barina, always, every single fucking time. And the Holden Barina, you can do it up as much as you want. You know what I mean? It's still not going to beat a Ferrari that's straight out of the factory. But if you leave the Ferrari in the rain, never look after it, never service it, eventually the Barina, if you look after it, will beat you. You know, the Barina will never make Formula One, though. That's what people don't get. Like, you got to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges to bacon and velocity. And also, genetics is not, you were talking about it earlier, I don't know if we were off there. Genetics is not just how high I can jump, how fast I can run. It's also how I'm wired. You know what I mean? Not everyone is wired in a way that like, you know what I mean? That they're going to grasp techniques the same way. There's people that, like, when they're doing techniques, they feel it different. You know what I mean? Like, their spatial awareness, their neural adaptations are completely different to other people. Like myself, I can't dance. My whole family can dance. My whole family can play instruments, music. I am broken. And I have to watch when people bob so that I can bob in time to the music. I'm watching them. I can't hear the beat. Right? I don't know why that is. I can't dance. You know, like, it's whatever happened with me, I just fucking can't. You know, like, and I'm sure if I did 20 hours a week of it, I would get better. But I'm never gonna. In the whole time I'm spending my time doing that, I'm not spending my time doing stuff that I'm good at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be an average dancer. You get what I mean?
Yeah, exactly right. I had an episode, and it was episode 3, and I just spoke purely about genetics, and you know, it was surprising. You know, I've done some research, and 70% of someone's ability just to perform a skill is genetic. Like, that's how much it's heritability. And it's.
I don't know. I don't know because I don't. Like I said, I'm not a scientist, but I've seen it like just so much. You know what I mean? Like that it's.
Yeah. It's
And also, I'll tell you something else. I'm a hard trainer. Like, I always trained hard, and I'm not gifted. Like, not now, but you know, my 20s and I'm not gifted. Like, but if you put me in any sport that I'd have played, that for the attributes that I have, I would have probably made, you know, rep level for whatever sport. But like that extra thing, or maybe would have made first grade, for instance, in a team if I'd have played fucking soccer, for instance. Maybe if I'd have really, that's what I wanted to do. But there's a big difference between a guy that makes first grade, plays a few years first grade, great, you achieve something, and someone that stands out in fucking first grade, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
there's a big difference. Like, that's the unbridgeable gap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was funny you used the Ferrari analogy because I used the exact same one. I basically compared a Ferrari to a Ford Ranger to a Toyota Camry and how we're wired up and basically, you can have that Ferrari, but it's basically about the driver on the inside, and how he looks after that
Yeah.
Ferrari. So, we didn't even speak about this off air. This is just
No, we haven't.
coincidence. Like, it's the exact same, and it's science proven. Like, even someone's, obviously body types highly genetic, but yeah, I found it really surprising, your ability to perform a skill. I don't know why, but is 70% genetic, and that's probably why you see some guys, they haven't kicked the football or kicked the soccer ball, 10 years, and then they come back, and after 5 minutes, they're pretty good again. Like, not going to be obviously in their peak, but they're quite good. You see Mike Tyson on the pads as well. He's after how long's the layoff he's been? Maybe 15 years, 20 years. And it's just it's interesting
But Mike
because
Tyson would have hit you hard, no matter how fucking old. You know what I mean? Had he
yeah,
never boxed, he would have hit you super hard. On top of which, he would have taken your best shots. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying would he have beat Evander Holyfield if he never boxed. Of course not. But you're not comparing apples to apples. We had a kid, man. I had a kid that I trained on and off since he was about 5 years old. And then from about 5 years old, I didn't train him. Other people trained him. He actually used to train with Volkanovski when he was young, when they were young. And then he came to my wrestling team when he was about 14. Super gifted kid. Blake Barton was his name. Super gifted. And he hadn't wrestled for years. He called me up one day. I was in Hawaii. And he called me up and he's like, hey, Fab, I'm thinking of moving to Sydney, blah, 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 blah. And he got a job in Sydney and he moved from where he was and he came here. And he was fat. He was out of shape and everything. And I said to Rob, this kid will be a good fucking... Like, this kid won everything. Won nationals a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Won international medals as well in wrestling. He was good. Very, very good wrestler. Lost Olympic trials to Ali Abdu from Melbourne. And then, he went on and he's a young guy. He's 18 years old when he lost. Then I hadn't seen him for about 5 years. And he came to our session and he was twice the man he used to be. Like, fat, you know what I mean? Like this. And this dude, like, was fucking doing backflips. Like, and I'm not talking about like just little backflip, like running, doing round off, backward somersaults, everything. And he looked like, like the Iron Marshmallow Man. The way he's wired, he's like a cat. He's wired completely different to Rob's like that too. Like, he's wired like that. He's wired like someone like Rob. If you jumped on him when he's 50 and he's asleep, he'll kill you. He'll just wake up, blink twice, and knock you out. You know what I mean? Like, they're not wired the same way.
yeah,
Now, there's no fucking way that if I took 5 years off and put on 15 kilos, I'm coming back and going, oh, this is going to be hard. I'll watch me do a backflip. I'll break my neck. It won't happen. And that weekend we went out to do the sand dunes. We used to do the sand dunes. This guy did the same as everybody else. Like, he struggled through them. He wasn't keeping up with everyone else, but he still did, like, I don't know. It's the equivalent of, imagine doing 10 400s, right, on pace.
yeah.
Right? This guy maybe didn't keep the pace, but
Still did them.
you know what I mean? 10
Yeah.
400s is fucking hard. Like,
Not easy.
If
Yeah.
you do 10 400s at any time, it doesn't matter what time you're doing it. If you do like 400 at a, you got to run it as fast as you can, buddy. I'm not even going to put the time on. If you do 10 400s like that, I'm impressed. If you do them on time, it's a different story. Now we're talking about elite athletes. This guy probably didn't do them on the time, but he still did 10 400s at his fastest pace. You have to be born a little bit fucking different, dude, to be able to take those shots. You know what I mean? And also have, like, whatever it is, like your heart and your ability to, like, when I say heart, I don't mean the figurative, it's got a big heart. I mean, literally your heart has to be so efficient with the ability to pump blood to the rest of your body, you have that cardio. because yeah, they train insane amount of training, but even to do that insane amount of training, you have to have the genetics to do it, right? So you have all of these things, and you have the chin that you can take a shot. Because if you take shots, man, it does gas you as well, you know. So you have to have the chin to take the shots, and then have the cardio to keep lasting. You know what I mean? And to keep going until the other person breaks. But there's a big neural fatigue as well, man, because what happens is you hit me, say I'm Diaz, and I start to take up the cage. So I start to walk you down. Now you can't move backwards. You can only move side to side. You can't come forward, right? Now you are completely reacting to my feints. So when I'm here, I'm like that. You can only react. You're starting to do this. You're starting to stiffen up. And that neural fatigue starts to affect you. And then he starts to go pop, 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 pop. And people say he doesn't hit hard. Dude, try this experiment.
Yeah.
Not even volume, dude. Get your friend to put those little gloves on and just snap the jab in your face. Pop, 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 pop. Those, they hurt, man. They're just stings, you know? And the Diaz brothers are not little guys. They're not little. They're fucking pretty big guys. Yeah, even for those divisions. And when I say big guys, they're like big hands, like broad kind of guys. They're not.
Yeah. They got big frames, yeah.
Yeah, they're not little guys. They're and long arms, and that like whip, whack, whack, whack. And you start to react to that against the cage. You know what I mean? You start to like that causes a huge amount of neural fatigue. And the guys are just like, you do that, for how long are you going to do that? I mean, you know better than me with that. If I'm reacting with this, your neural system goes quick. It's not like I can't do this for hours. Like they had a heightened sense of like trying to react to you punching when you're walking down, and you can't. And I'm hitting you, and you just keep coming. That's hard to fight someone like that.
Yeah, and with central fatigue as well, because there's central fatigue and peripheral fatigue. Like, there's obviously peripheral fatigue. You know, that's a lot of it's to do with your genetic makeup. Like Ngannou's not meant to fight 5 rounds. You know, for example, same as Cannonier. I think he's got 2 rounds in him. You know, very explosive, and that's a big storm. You know, people have got to weather for that first round or 2. But that central fatigue doesn't really get talked about. And like you said, you know, in the 3rd or 4th round, and when they're in deeper waters, you know, it's a bit harder to get that head off the center line and, you know, to move around, because you can't see that, because it's just, you know, you got to almost anticipate that, because your central fatigue system, you know, your ability to see what's coming is actually affected as well.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about it.
That's why, like, you know, like people don't understand it. Like what Rob went through against Romero in the 2nd fight, right? If you're not like your level of fitness is not through the fucking roof, like, and I'm telling you, man, like how fit Rob was for that fight, like, you're not, dude. You're not. Try it. Run as fast as you can on a treadmill and get your mate to hit you in the face at random. You don't even know when he's going to do it, and then jump back on the treadmill and try and run. You know, like you can't. Like, so how fit you've got to be into, you know that you're still fighting and keep going, man. You know, it's hard. If you think about it, like the flight or fight is lasts 30 seconds. You know, when you're after about 15 minutes, like all that adrenaline and all of that's gone. Like you're feeling the shots, you're feeling the fatigue, you're feeling different things. You start to be aware of shit, which is like, it's different as well. Like you start to be aware of people saying, you know what I mean? Like it's, and you feel shit. You start to feel the pain in your arms, in your legs, in the broken bones, and all that. How Romero got through that fight, I will never know. Because he got his orbitals broken in the first round. And then he 8 shots after that on the face with a broken orbital. You know, and Romero medal at every major world tournament wrestling for 10 years. He's one of the best wrestlers of all time. He lost the gold medal to Adam Saitian, which is one of the best wrestlers at that weight. And he lost, got a silver medal at the Olympics. Like, that's the company you're in, you know. It's not. It's
Fabricio, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Coming on the podcast. You know, it's been awesome to grab an insight into, you know, some of your backgrounds and knowledge. You know, not just from sport, like in the everyday world and the corporate world as well. Because I think sport, the beauty about sport, a lot of these concepts, and even with education, you can relate it to everyday life. The way you
Absolutely. Yeah. I
communicate.
think it's a common language, like
Yeah,
mathematics, it's a common language.
yeah,
Sport's a common language.
yeah, and yeah, it's been awesome to grab your insight as well and share some of your experiences with some of your athletes as well. So, thank you so much for
A
that.
great time, man. Thank you so much.